to celebrate the publication of Ed's new book, Blind Horses and Still More Poems. But it's actually a collected works. It's actually 3 books, Blind Horses, Apples Rolling Down the Lawn, and they've got a title for the
Deep Bells.
Deep Bells
And New Poems.
and New Poems. And we're actually here to celebrate much more than a book publication. I think Shonodi put it best on her flyer for this. We're here to celebrate a life devoted to poetry. That's it, his life. And I want to talk a little bit about that life because it's that life as well as the excellence of the poems, as well as the fact that you'd be very, if you ever hear anyone read as well as you hear Ed Lahey read. His grandfather came into Montana in the 1880s, I think, Ed, with the Irish railroad worker. Small farmstead after that. Ed's dad didn't take well to farming, so he got into small independent mining operations, and he got into moonshine. Wonderful moonshine made up all the little gullies and ravines around Butte. Ed's mother was the first woman to get her pilot's license in the state of Montana. Well, the reason for that is if you're going to drop those ingredients for that sour mash, it's a lot safer than driving up those ravines. And so she delivered the goods over and over again. Ed too flew, and flying was in the family, and I want to tell one flying story that I think embodies the life of that family and also think is a metaphor for Ed's life as a poet. His dad and he were working a mine up around Jefferson City, which is about 25 miles out of Helena. Late in the day, Ed thought it'd be great to be able to go into Butte and see his girlfriend that night. This is mid-50s. Asked his dad if he could borrow the Super Cub, souped-up Piper Cub, which they kept in a hangar in Helena. Dad said, yeah, but remember the airfield at Butte doesn't have any landing lights on it, and be sure and give yourself enough time to get there before dark. So Ed, after work, cleaned up, dressed up, drove the 25 miles into Helena. As an old man there at the airport, helped him get the Super Cub out of the hangar, and takes off. Files his flight report with his little short-range radio that he's got in the plane, and notices as he's climbing that between Helena and Butte there's a huge thunderstorm, a huge storm complex filled with lightning and swirling around, and thinks, oh, there's no way I'm going to fly through that. And so he said, I'll fly around it. I'll go around the Whitehall and I'll find the Whitehall Valley and I'll come in from the south, which he begins to do. But when he gets around there, Whitehall's moved. Whitehall's not there. It is disoriented. He sees that the lights are beginning to come on at the little farmsteads around. And he's looking around and sees that there's a bunch of lights down off here to the right. And figures, well, maybe Whitehall moved over there, or maybe I'll discover where I am if I go and find out where that is. And so circles down and down and down. And finally is able to read the letters on a building in that little town, and it says Western Montana College. So he knows he's at Dillon. And he knows if he follows the highway straight north, he'll get to Butte. And as he's flying the highway north up to Butte, he also notices that the little bobber in the auxiliary gas tank that's out in front of him, which is a small tank, a gallon or 2 only, it's about halfway down. He's bobbing up and down, and that he was so excited to see his girlfriend that he had forgotten to fill the wing tanks with gas when he left Helena. And he doesn't have a lot of gas left, and it's starting to get pretty dark. The Anaconda smelter stack never looked so good to you, he said when you flew by it. And meanwhile, at home, Mom and Dad is called the airport, and it's after dark, and there's no Ed. And of course, Mother is pissed at Father for letting Edward have the airplane. Father calls everyone that they know, and everyone is in the family, and tells them to go to the airport, line their cars up on either side of the runway, so that if Ed does make it in, he'll at least have some light from the car lights to land by. And as he gets close enough for his radio work, he lets the tower know that he's coming in, and the tower lets the people know, and so as Ed comes into land by, everyone turns their headlights on, and Ed is able to land, not exactly slipping in the back door, quietly, but sort of in front of everybody in the blaze of headlights. I sort of think of all that lostness and risk and excitement and finally not being able to slip in the back door is sort of a metaphor for poetry and the life of poets. So, I'll tell you what, that's turn on our headlights, and everybody give Ed Lahey a big, friendly St. Patrick's Day welcome.
It wasn't a Super Cub. I was sitting there being an old pilot thinking, oh, but that it had been a Super Cub. I was flying an air coupe, which was a very slow little plane. It had an 85 horsepower Continental engine in it. It had a top speed of about 105. And I was really lost. And one of the reasons I was lost is I was listening to Louis Armstrong on the headset. Well, I'm most known, I guess, for the blind horses. And since this is St. Paddy's Day, and since there are friends of mine who have come, who I went to school with when I was in Butte, well over 35 years ago, I want to read for the first poem, the lead poem in the first section of this little collection. I'm very pleased about this book. I'm indebted to the people who helped put it together. Janet Homer did a wonderful job as an editor. I'm pleased with the cover design, showing two blind horses leaping out of a typewriter, which I think is just great. The blind horses. The old man in the hospital bed with his horny yellow foot stuck through the stainless rails claimed that July night, the one he picked to die on, he smelled sulfur on his gown. When he was my age, he worked the lower levels of the Lex in a great underground corral, yoked iron tongues to wagons filled with ruby silver and peacock copper rock, flaked sweet hay to horses, shot the worn out. Dozens of tramway horses hauled hard switched whipple trees, rubbed the timbered tunnels clean, pulling down the cribbed up drifts, brass lanterns swinging, work bits in their teeth, slick with mine damp and cold to the touch. Dry stalls in the crosscut cave of that stone corral caught fire in '98. The horses, tunnel blind from lack of light, burned up in the green flame that licked the lagging black in the Lexington mine. I met his eyes cracked white, like a drunk's who hasn't had a drink in months. He said he could hear hoofbeats ring and click against the granite footwalls. He complained of being cold. His nostrils flared. I hear them breathing. Ed? When I came over here to go to school, to go to the university years ago, I used to always read the Montana Standard. I'd like to read what was going on in my hometown. I had a very deep feeling for Butte, and I still do. I'm glad I'm not over there with the 20,000 visitors who come to town and turn it into a circus. But I think that the town is much maligned and has much more merit than people realize, and that the people have been really exceptional people who have grown up and lived there and worked there and died there. Anyway, I decided I'd write a letter to the editor because I was offended at an article that was in the Montana Standard. It was then a Lee newspaper and much controlled by the ACM company. And they were calling for volunteers to help clean the streets, which peed me off a little bit. Instead of "I like it," someone said the Chamber of Commerce slogan should have read, "Butte is my town, let's face it," which I couldn't. Surface wit will not dampen a ghostly rattle. The cough of miner's con is heard hacking silicotic glitter. How could I, whose grandfather kissed with flaky lips evidence of ruined lungs, live with all that wit? Should I ignore the brittle whore whose rotten flower thighs smothered old Sean while flat-hat commercemen chat about litter bugs? Filth in the street, debris, garbage cans, volunteers, radon daughters, the paper said. I remember Sean sat out of a rustling card, drunk and puking sharp death. They're all skimers, Ed. Every mother one, and they hung Mucky Malone to the Rocker Bridge. Papers came out as usual. Father Fitz said the last rites, and I bled salty love from the corner of wake eyes down generous legs of Sean's little girl. So suck up your own litter, file it in your copper shaft, blow it down that Kelly, belch in a Mexican miner's face before he tastes your brand of chili. They continued to send me the paper.
Did they publish it?
No, they didn't. They were kind of short of courage. But that's not so for a lot of their subscribers. I like especially the story of the miner in Butte who would go down, he was walking down the drift and he had a carbide lamp. This was a long while back in the 30s, 40s maybe. And he was provoked with one of the shift bosses, and so he took his carbide lamp and he would draw a cartoon figure on the wall of rock, on the hanging wall, and make a cartoon out of it so that when the shift boss would come by, he would see that and be startled at the cartoon. And to give the old Montana Post credit, they got wind of this guy working in the mines and hired him as their cartoonist. That's the way life should work out.
That's right.
Here's a poem I'll read that I wrote as a letter to Dick Hugo, who was my teacher and who I had a lot of regard for, who was really a magnetic and remarkable poet. Letter to the owner of a ghost. I was visiting with your poem the way a ghost dissolves, knowing you might have written it with a burnt match on butcher paper or a grocery wrap if your pencils were lost, or cut it into a piece of slate lugged down from some mountain. Here's news. Bulldozers have mucked up your house. The outline of the kitchen stands. At night, walking in the waste, I hear belly laughter defeating the slice of the cat's blade, chuckling in the sink drain where time and so much ice melted. Some ghosts do not fade. They live in unoccupied space. If you cradle an ear and listen, you can hear the fat man talk. Courtly host, unlucky lover, king of the Khyber rifles. Or see the face, quick image from a lost station, broadcasting from Atlantis. In a letter, a poet shouldn't boast. So come back home from Italy and I'll show you what I mean. Even if they have planted lawn over the grave of your house, some substantial part will remain to cheat the grass an iron cat that tries to doze away your ghost. This is an audience that's getting older. Nice to remember Dick. He used to say, "How can you stand working in the mines?" He said, "You know, I never worked hard at anything but writing a poem." He knew better than that, but it was a great thing to say. There's a poem I wrote after having taken a walk up to Diamond City outside of Helena. I was teaching high school there, and one weekend I did some hiking back up in the backcountry and went up to a little town they called Diamond City, which had been settled by Southerners. Confederate shacks. I snowshoed over windfalls and watched hawks circle Confederate Gulch. Now gray ghosts inhabit homesteads, and the pain of Southern deserters dissolves into wood rust beneath hawk shadow and the ache of 100 winters. Each northern drift crusts thicker than Sherman's rubble. Spirits in battered hats haze whisker-frozen cattle into windbreak barns. They ditched the glory of the myth and came from southern hunger to meet wind and canyon, far from managed battle. 5 miles up the gulch and tired, the snow-starched shack, glazed remains of a weathered bunker far from Shiloh. Ice jarred the door case, but ricks of wood banked rot around the walls to freeze in place. What storm battalions could not do, I did by lifting up the latch. Inside, gone black and ash of a decomposing room, a shattered comb, a picture of a woman, yellow from back home, a letter. Dearest, forgive me, Daddy says. When I left, I slammed the goddamn door. Hawks in sunsail echoes over monstrous tracks. It makes no difference. No smoke rises from dead shacks. Well, I'm doing a lot of reading out of poetry that I've written a long time ago. Maybe it would be fun to read a few poems that are rather recent. Here's a poem I wrote in honor of my ex-wife. I hope she feels like it honors her. It grew out of an incident in which I met her when they, at the Safeway, when they first built the Safeway. It's now an old Safeway. When they first built it, it was a new Safeway. I went shopping there, and lo and behold, coming down an aisle was my ex-wife, pushing a stroller, and in the stroller was my infant granddaughter, who I had only seen one time before. And she recognized me, of course, and we stopped, and I was so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say, you know. What do you say? Birds of a feather. A woman I love, my ex-wife, with our infant granddaughter, rounded an aisle in the new Safeway where we were shopping. There's a sparrow flying overhead, she said when she saw me. We both looked upwards. I wanted so badly to tell her something she could cherish, so she would know that I love her, like her even, more than I hate her. But all I could think of was a bird I once saw shredded by an electric fan, feathers floating willy-nilly. She looked so fey upon hearing my story, shyly, so shyly, walking away, pushing the stroller down another aisle, leaving me again Again, dead feathers gathering about my feet. After the copper mines failed, the company pulled out to write the hill operation off as a tax loss, and city fathers spoke of sentimental history instead of evil. Local artists were commissioned to portray Western scenes on the east wall of the Miners' Bank, calculated to convey the hard rock glories of yesterday. It was thought by some avaricious history might keep us together, like the memory of a succulent supper, until the town's buildings began to burn one by one like candles on a cake. Stores and shops shut their doors. Houses were deserted, leaving curtainless windows to stare at tourists who strolled the streets like actors on a vacant movie set. Wives who hated hellholes grew morbid without a monthly check, seldom combed their hair or smiled men male, and left neglected children to lurk about black iron gallows frames, smoking cigarettes. Miners who did not wander off to Idaho, nursing hopes of silver, drank too much, grew mean in bars, muttering to one another of explosive rounds that would go with a sexual shudder, leaving Bornite like broken dreams on the floors of flooded stopes. A critic wrote that I was just a small-town Marxist. Sure, I said, but quite friendly, merely curious about the company and what happened to the Indians in Chile after the CIA murdered Allende. I was fighting with the My granddaughter and my daughter came up to visit me. I hadn't seen my daughter in years, and she brought with her my two granddaughters, and I got to spend some time with my granddaughters. It's really interesting. You can learn so much from children. They have such a refreshing way of seeing things and even of saying things. I wanted to play with her, and I wanted to impress upon her the fact that I could do what she could do, and I would be glad to try anyway. And so she wanted to swing in a swing, and so I would swing in a swing, and pretty soon she said, "Push me, Ed." She was tired of watching me try to swing. She wanted a little help. You don't mind, you're the big guy. So I pushed her. She was so small. And I had a doctor's appointment following this outing that I had with my grandchildren. And this works into this poem. But I called this poem Kate and I. There's another story that you should know, I guess, as background for this poem. My daughter, when she was young, worked over here in Missoula. And one time on the way home, she was going home to Helena, and she was going in the middle of the night, or early morning hours, and it was dark, and she was driving the Volkswagen, which I had given to her. And she was speeding along over by Drummond, and she was behind a semi, and the tire on the semi jumped off in her path, or she thought it did. She was probably a little bit out of it when she saw that happen. In fact, what had happened was a skunk had run across the road. But she was looking at that tire, and she thought that the tire had come off of the tire carrier, and it scared her because if she'd hit that, she knew she would be in trouble, and she hit the steering wheel, and she went up that divide, that cement divider, and rolled that Volkswagen 7 times. And the window came up real hard on one side, and it cut her hair off on the side of her head. Just shaved her head, cut all her hair off. That was the only injury she sustained. She called me up and she said, "Oh, it was a no-fault accident, Dad." Anyway, with all of this memory in my mind and thinking about her and pushing my granddaughter for the first time meeting her, I wrote this poem and I've called it Kate and I. Two on the swing at once, one in mind, the other swinging just as high as her mother sits at the wooden table saying, "Hang on." I push the swing as carefully as care. My balance I check with every nerve. My memory is dark with fear. Someone dear might fall, but I'm with her and take my turn at 63. She waves her little finger. A tree beyond shakes out a leaf in the light. Her mother says, "Hang on." I slow the swing, my hands around her trim body. God, she's small. We are here because of love. No one seems to know just why, yet we are more than one, and she and I are having fun. It is sometimes hard to go on in. Time is ticking, and what can I say? I held her mother just so and tenderly pushed her too up into the sky, where years later she rolled her bug on a dark night road. 7 times it turned like a tomato can. The windows snapped off her hair on the driver's side. It is she who says, "Hang on." She's right there. Her star looks like a rolling tomato can. A shower of meteorites like rich auburn hair. A sparkle falling from somewhere like grains of golden sand, where a swinger draws back a swing up into the sky and says, "Hang on." These babes know how, I say. The doctor looks away, since he has a crowded day and knows I can't stay long for a chat, that I must be getting back to her little finger. I ran into a poem that I wrote years ago that I really like. It was a strange poem, though. It was like I've included it in my new poems because it hasn't ever been published and it's been lost for years. But I've been in the process of moving from one apartment to another, and I stumbled across this poem, and it still gets to me. I think it's a kind of a deep poem involving eros and thanatos, you might say. It's a poem that's almost necrophiliac in its development. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't intended to be. I was most in love with this woman, and I still am. She is a very, very close and dear friend of mine. Her name is Jenny Warwick. She had gone over to Butte with a bunch of people to protest their being inducted into the armed service during the Vietnam War. She was a social activist, and she was interested in making as much of a protest as she could. And she went with these students, and I felt guilty because I didn't go. I had kind of drawn back. I was very much on her side and wanted to be a part of the protest, but Butte, I said, I don't know if I can take that or not. And I was really worried about her. I thought maybe some idiot would really be tough to handle. And I was talking to her on the phone the other day, and she said, "You were right." Call to arms in honor of Jenny Warwick. The electric chill scrapes deserted streets of the 1 o'clock city. Beyond reason, I cross the mountain pass. I come for her body. The wind eddies in the corner of my eyes. I march to her parlor. The skirts of the town sing choice choir notes. Her voice whispers a chime like the come of my woman. She is cold on the slab and solemn. So solemn, she says, "I love you." Her body naked and warm in my blood. Isn't that a strange poem? What I do. Well, here's a poem that is appropriate for St. Patrick's Day, and is a poem that honors my hometown. Dr. Butte. They said he had cures for everything, depression even. When the economy was a canker sore, everyone wore along with old hats out of World War II. He didn't fake it, they said. He had the medicine, glue with mold, primitive, older than penicillin, older perhaps than copper, as old as bone, better than money, for which cancer could be stopped dead in its intricate path, but not radiation or tea, simple cell glue like friendship, but organic, not spiritual, put on like honey on toast, with a deep chuckle as if a wordless benediction. There, Dr. Butte said, we were cured of blight, of dirty sky, of brown buildings, cured of the late 20th century. Dr. Butte provided the glue so we could go on, so our fingers would work and our graves would wait, undug in the green cemetery. The old poet. A nerve clicked like a switch in my elbow. I dropped the pick, waited in the manway, delicate, next to rock and timber, puzzled by the lack of rhythm, the flickering electric, gumbo on my boots, a dull dynamite headache. The round would go with a moan, a lasting rumble, a slow, low-grade 40% powder working in red cakey rock we hoped would break easy. The hanging wall looked shaky. A day later, her eyes beckoned as she slipped upstairs past me, the blind miner who sipped black coffee, muttered about the price of copper and what was happening underground in Chile. This book, I think it's great. I'm not so photogenic. Dust jacket. Look, the quiet image, down to earth, a man from a measured distance. I'll buy him a drink, dark Colombian coffee. What does it matter, sadness? Many must know it. Many are alone. Some are alone and don't know it. I am alone. I know it. The bandit on the inside of the dust jacket proves it. But that is my brother, the tired actor, the sad romantic. I met him years ago, walking down the country road, looking for a handout with those pleading eyes, saying what? Pass the Applejack, or I'll play Jesse James. He insists with a wink, draws his pearl-handled Colt. I go on with my poem. Be careful, my brother, I say, raising my hand with the pen. We're both getting older. Here's a poem that John Holbrook always asks me to read. I see him sitting there, so I'll have to read this poem. The Ballad of the Board of Trade Bar. Coal Oil Belle was a red lamp legend in a brown town. She worked her trade behind a smelter stack in the echo of the night shift whistle. Her polished symbol, the hurricane lamp, red as a black widow's belly, swung in bronze relief, an evening star above the dark oak door of the Board of Trade Bar. Belle's fame is now renowned. In a town of misery, one needs sentimental history. I've never heard it said that anyone thinks it strange they often neglect to tell of the madam's final bid, a $2,000 engraved coffin, lined with silver beneath a smoking torch, 10 pounds of bone. Her house is in the ground. Some men know when the whistles blow, her earless sockets listen as her hip bones move to the pocket sound of a lover's jingle. Well, I believe that's about the extent of my energy for this reading. Thank you very much. Okay. I have a table of contents, I'll have you know. Gimp O'Leary's Ironworks, for my dad. You hear a lot of lies about O'Leary, but he could seal a crack in steel no matter what the size. His arc welder would strike white fire and a bead of blue-black rod would slide along between cherry streaks, and acrid smoke would curl away to leave clean married steel, not too frail or buttered up, but straight and strong, hard as mill-forged rail. Of course, you might say, don't use that example as a metaphor for poetry. Welding is a matter of utility. And you'd be right. Still, I remember the look on his face when he'd lift his great helmet and sneak up on the finished job with his unprotected eyes. It was always between him and the piece of steel, a struggle of molecules and will. Often others would say to him, "Damn good job," or some such thing. If it was, he'd grin and look again, as if he thought the natural light would show a flaw or bridge that didn't fuse. Convinced, I guess, that in his struggle with the steel, he could seldom really win. He knew perfection could conceal the wound beneath the arc of his art. I liked him for that. You want to hear the old Butte rat, huh? Before the old Butte rat falls down at the boat.
Sorry, you're red.
I will not end up like the baker with the sign that reads, "Need food," even though, of course, honesty may be everything. I think a philosopher should have something to talk about. A writer, something to write about. I have never been able to do more than declare I am a chip on the foamy river, and on the chip, hey, I say, I'm still afloat. Rumi wrote, beyond ideas of wrongdoing, beyond ideas of right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I wonder who might bring bread. That's what I wonder. Why a field? I'll meet you in the alley, I say. Of course, I am from Butte, not silky Persia or smooth move America. Still, it is the Indian paintbrush flowers and bear grass that get to me as I fork through the sausage of current affairs, remembering the sacred little mining operations of the past. It is also the sky without contrail. To gaze at the heavens now is to peer through a shattered windshield, cracked up by lawless, noisy aircraft. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of blue.